All right, guys, we are on day 3 of social studies. You should have this page. It should be labeled day 3 up at the top. This is comparing industry and agriculture. This is talking about the Civil War. You're going to read about the industrial north and the agricultural in the south, and then we're going to answer some questions. So remember, we've talked about like the difference between the north and south and kind of what has been going on leading up to the Civil War. I'm going to read the first one. First, there were many large cities in the north, and they were crowded. So the first box is about the north. There was public education, so some children went to school. There were natural resources. This meant there were industries and factories. Immigrant workers came to the north and worked in the cities and factories. There were no plantations. Remember, plantations are the farms that the slaves were working on. So slavery was not common. Many people in the north had jobs in business, medicine, and education. Other people mostly worked making things. I'm going to go ahead and read the second box. This is about the south. In the South, not many children went to school. There were not many schools, so only the very rich received an education. The soil and climate were perfect for big crops such as tobacco and cotton, so obviously they're growing these things. These made a lot of money, but they were a lot of work. Enslaved people worked on the large plantations, so the South is where they had the slaves actually working on these plantations. They kept the plantations going. There were no large cities with factories. People in the South mostly worked on farms or they joined the military. You have 3 questions here at the bottom. You need to use complete sentences. You need to use sentence starters, punctuation, capital letters. Number 1, which region would be more difficult for children to live in and why? So you are going to reread this a little bit and figure out, do you think that the North was more difficult for kids to live in, or do you think the South was more difficult? Once you figure out which one you want to pick, you're going to tell me that, and then you're going to tell me why. You have to explain why you chose your answer. Remember, I tell you all the time, I'll take your answer as long as you can back up your reasoning. So you could put, it was more difficult for children to live in the South because, or it was more difficult for children to live in the North because. Number 2, how did some of these differences lead people to go to war? So we're talking about the Civil War here. How did the differences between what was going on in the North and what was going on in the South, how did that lead to the Civil War? And an example of a sentence starter might be some of the differences that led the country to war is, or some of the differences that led people to war are. In what ways were the North and the South similar? So if you're talking similar, you're comparing them. How were they the same? What ways were the North and the South the same? This is all you have to do for social studies today.